The
Only if you guys singing or staying alive with the beat.
I was going to say, the opportunity for you
There you
guys
go.
to jump on my chest is probably too much to handle. So, is there anyone for public comment? Mr. Seal?
Maybe. I have to find out if the comments regarding the fire authority
Come up to the
are part
microphone.
of the agenda or not.
I think
Under
with
the
the
presentation.
presentation.
Under presentation,
Would
they are.
qualify.
Okay. Tim Seal, 459 Riverside Drive, Holly, Michigan, 48442. I am also the president of the union, North Oakland County Firefighters Union, IFF 5346. A couple things I wanted to mention, and I think it's been made clear. The consequences to the dissolution, I believe Supervisor Cullis will spell out very clear. However, financially, it would be a huge issue. We are well aware of the issues that are going on. As a union, we do have some recourse under PARA, which is a Public Employees Relations Act, and under MERC, which is a Municipal Employees Relation Committee. So we are following those. We are doing the best we can. We have attempted negotiations on many levels, and for some reason it seems to feel the need that a attorney has to be present for any type of negotiations. Now, mind you, I was union president and on the union board down in my old department for a total of 12 years, and I can assure you that the union has no interest in bringing our legal counsel in until we're almost said and done, or unless we meet an impasse. So the need to frivolously spend money, I don't believe exists. And I can also assure you that as the union representing the full-time firefighters in the North Oakland County Fire Authority, we are looking to bargain in good faith. I don't believe we are looking to destroy anybody's budgets. I think we're just looking for fair pay, benefits, and safety within the department, which I think spills over into the protection of the residents as well. So we're doing everything we can on our end. We just ask that everybody consider anything else that could be done, whether it's public outcry at the board meeting or whatever. There is obviously an identified problem there that needs to be resolved. So thank you for your time, honorable board, and thank you, citizens. Have a good night.
Anyone else for public comment?
I have a question. Is that the time to talk about the farmstead?
Yeah, you,
Oh,
As
yeah.
the Farmstead
Mhm.
Project Manager?
as the project, Farmstead Project Manager? Yeah.
Okay. On this farmstead deal, I see we got the door on there. The problem is when you do a X, it collects all the water at one point to damage the door, but I was glad we do that. We also have windows that are missing and the curtains are blowing out of the house, so I'd like to see some project work on fixing that. It looks like hillbilly. The other thing on this, I guess we're going to talk about it sometime, but they want to tear down this building, and they want to have the old Sherman School be a community center, so that the village moves out there, puts their offices out there, and then the veterans can go out there and they can have activities there. So that would also be a good place to put the township offices, instead of building this big parking lot where you have to maintain it, you have to do the snow plowing and everything else. If it was in a group setting, it would be much better than spending all the money into building buildings out there, and then have all the drainage go into the river that's right next to the edge of the barn, and all the maintenance that's going to be associated with it, all the paving that would be necessary. So I'd like to have that thought about at least, is whatever they're cooking up here. We're going to find out some more. I'm going to talk a little bit further about that in the new business, but we'd save this donation that the Motts are doing, and we could use it for some other worthwhile endeavors, like the river connecting the Fish Lake Road property with the village park along the river, something like that, that would be more in keeping with the tradition and what I envision is a nice place for people to live in North Oakland County instead of paving everything over.
Anyone else for public comment? No, come on, sir. Just start with your name and address.
Yeah, Phil Marker, 6335 Laring Road. I was curious on Aldridge's gravel pit there. I noticed they're buying some properties up, so I have questions on where they're allowed to dig, how deep, how far, what's got to be done with a berm. Are they allowed to make an entrance on Laring Road? That's basically the questions.
You can see me in my office anytime, and I can go over that with you.
You can? Okay. All right, that's all I had then.
Okay.
Philip, P-H-I-L-L-I-P. Mark, M-A-R-K-E-R.
Thank you.
Mr. Stern?
Not usually talk to you that way.
I'm sorry.
You people that aren't familiar with me from watching the videos, I'm the disruptive force in Rose Township.
Would you care to start out with your name and address?
Oh, thank you, sorry. My name is Julius Stern, I live on Munger Road, Rose Township. Thank you for this. I made a mistake, I make a lot of mistakes. This is a draft copy. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the board and the public. I am from Rose Township. I am knowledgeable regarding the Northern Oakland County Fire Authority that Holly Township and Rose Township have board positions on. The citizens of Rose Township, by an overwhelming majority, want to participate in the corporation. You, Holly, have two members who are beyond reproach in their expertise and ethics and are doing an excellent job in representing your interests. They will do an effective job of explaining the problems, as they've done, regarding the confrontations in every meeting with the ignorant, vindictive, destructive Rose Township board members and their 3-2 majority. Diane Snyder, a former fired fireman and current Rose Township supervisor, the Rose Township treasurer, who states, "I don't care about laws, I just don't, it just doesn't feel right," and the unelected citizen at large, a proven liar and bully who rules the meetings as a bully. The experience with your treasurer and board member, Karen Winchester. I expect he will be removed at the next meeting, since the entire firemen's organization, with the exception of the NACFA firemen who abstained, unanimously gave him a no confidence vote. I don't believe either of these townships can sustain independent departments, and the dissolution, which it appears the inane Rose Township administration wants, will reduce the fire department's ratings and cost all residents dramatically increased homeowners insurance premiums and diminished service. You have extremely competent representation by your supervisor, George Coulis, often mocked by the treasurer of Rose Township as George Clueless, and clerk Karen Winchester, and an excellent high-rated fire chief. Trust your elected officials to explain elements and recommendations for fire and emergency service in your township. I hope the collaboration between the two townships can be sustained The tyranny of Peter Stouffer is untenable. His removal will provide opportunity for the future. Thank you.
All right, anyone else for public comment? None appearing, we will go to old business. Number one, the farmstead project manager. So I spoke with the family on the topic. I am currently, I've reached out through, just so you know, in that meeting, John Ballant from HRC was present, so they had an opportunity to meet him and ask questions that they had. And in that meeting, we're going to do some, reach out to companies that do project management and look at that. And when I come back in March, we'll have some, I don't know if you'd call it a bid or just proposals from these companies on the projects for you. I know at the last meeting we talked and I took some notes. I know, Mark, one of your concerns was errors and omissions and having insurance for that. Was there anything else I needed to have on the top of my list from anybody concern-wise?
I gave mine last month, yeah.
Yeah.
That's when we, I don't know when it moves from planning to actual construction, but we'd want to verify that the construction companies have their own liability insurance.
Right.
Then it doesn't fall on, they don't try to piggyback onto Holly Township's liability.
Yep. Okay. Mr. Burton? Anything?
No.
Okay. All right. Then we'll go to number 2, which is the 2019-2020 audited financial statement presentation. Clerk Winchester reached out to Raymond in a phone call to see if they could do the presentation. We didn't get a response to that. So last week I started placing some calls to Raymond and I didn't get called back either. So on Friday I called and tried a different approach, going through some department people, and finally got a conversation with Doug Dieter, who is the supervisor for the audit, and he informed me that he didn't see a necessity for the presentation, seeing as the numbers were 2 years old. And I told him that the board had some questions, and he said he would be happy to answer the questions if somebody wanted to put them down in an email and send them to him. But he didn't feel at this point coming out to a public meeting had any benefit. He also informed me at that time, he said, especially considering we're no longer doing the audits for Howley Township, I didn't realize we had been notified of that. He said we didn't have a contract, and I wasn't aware. We still have an audit for 2021-22. I know you mentioned at the last meeting we should look for somebody. I didn't know that you literally meant we had nobody.
Well, I did not know that you know,
I didn't either.
I thought we would initiate a search for a new auditing firm, and once that had been secured, then we terminate our contract with Raymond.
Well, according to him, our contract is we don't have a contract with them, were his words.
Okay.
He said we don't have an active contract, and he said that they didn't intend to handle us as a client going forward.
Yeah,
So
well,
we'll need
I've
to-
been dissatisfied with their service for over 3 years.
Well, and the fact that it just happened Friday wasn't enough time to put anything together and put it on here, so we'll have to deal with it going forward. I would just, there's really no action to be taken here other than what I just reported, but we will come back. I would imagine hiring a new audit firm could go then under new business
Yes.
on the next meeting, so.
I think it's just interesting that they didn't show any indication that they wanted to continue as our auditors.
Well,
That's, I would think something that serious as far as basically severing the working relationship, the business relationship, that they would have sent at least a letter
Right.
of notification.
Yeah,
well,
or an email even would have been.
But
He,
I
he
just would,
seemed to think that he had made that clear. When I asked him if he had the document for that, he said it was per conversation. Then you get into this he said, she said, and at that point I just let it go.
sure.
So we did approve the 2019-2020 budget at the last meeting. So that
Audit?
pretty, I'm sorry, the audit.
Okay.
So that pretty much ends that
Mhm.
on that, and we'll head on into new business.
Well, just let me say, because we've discussed this here in open forum, that rest assured that since I've been treasurer, which has been the last 13 years, every audit has been a clean audit. That the public can rest assured.
No. Okay. Any other comments?
So my only question, I guess, is Raymond doing the 2020-2021?
No, we don't have any.
They're not doing that for us. Okay.
That's what we have to
And they
follow.
should have told us
Okay.
that months ago.
Yeah,
Yep.
right.
Yep.
So the 2021 should have been started as fall.
Right.
That audit was due in December, am I correct?
Mm, Yes.
They usually
Mhm.
start them in the fall, like September.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll have that on, under new business for next month. New business number 1, notice of eligibility to incorporate as a charter township. Karen?
Well, I really don't have any more information other than we receive these after every census, so every 10 years. They notice the general law townships that they have over a population of 2,000 and that you are eligible to become a charter township. I included some information about that from MTA. It really doesn't appear that we're ready for that. The charter townships are usually when when you need more millage, you can levy up to 5 mills, but you also provide the services, so it's for bigger townships.
Well, one of the major requirements is that you have to have your own police department. Police force. To become a charter township. Isn't that correct?
No, that's for annexation, so that for protection of annexation, that you become a charter township and you can show the, what's the commission, the state of Michigan, that you have your own police force and garbage services, and that you have 150 people per square mile.
Yep. And
So that-
state equalized valuation of at least 25 million, and zoning and ordinance or master plan.
Yep,
Yeah.
which we have.
Right.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I don't think you have to have your own police department because Milford Township is a charter. They don't have a police department. Um,
Who do they?
Yeah.
They contract.
I don't know whether they have.
a contract for police services.
I don't know whether they have the county.
Which would be sufficient.
Right.
We do not have a contract for police services.
No, and if
Right.
we had, if there is an annexation issue, they look at other things as well, and if you don't have the need for those services, it's not necessarily a deal breaker.
Yeah. And from what I understood from some conversations I had today with individuals who are, I mean, even if you met, so you become a charter township, you get a limited level of protection. You follow all those 4 steps, you get a limited level of protection, yet they still can come in and do it.
Yes, they can.
So,
That's by a vote of the people. Correct. Yeah.
But a charter township also requires a 7-member board.
Board. And then the supervisor is in charge of all the departments, and then you usually hire a manager that manages all that.
Township
Yeah.
manager.
Or superintendent, as they might call it.
Yeah. Well,
So would
I will
just-
say this, the 7-member board is something that I think we should look at. That's something we can put on the ballot without having to do the charter township. But I think as this township grows, a 7-member board would allow the clerk, the treasurer, and the supervisor to work as an administrative team and bring recommendations to the boards. I know one of the problems we currently have is if I'm talking to Mark on a project, I can't talk to Karen. If I'm talking to Karen, I can't talk to Mark because it becomes a violation of an Open Meetings Act. And that has created problems in the past. We had a project that you and I worked on for NACFA, actually, funding of the fire vehicle. And when that got done, I brought it to Karen to put on the agenda. She wanted to talk about it, and I said, I can't, Mark, and I've already dealt with it. We have to wait until the board. We've had topics that we've talked to that we can't talk to Mark, and it's awkward. We should, the township, regardless of who the people are, these three positions should be able to, in my estimation, should be able to work as an administrative team
Yes.
and bring recommendations to the board.
Hasn't that been on the 7-member board been on voter?
It was on
in
the
the past.
ballot,
We-
about 10 years ago?
We did a petition drive in 2012. Marla Davidson's right here, she helped. We got it on the ballot, and unfortunately, we didn't have enough money to do the educational mailings that would have informed people what it would do, and it went down at that time by about 200 votes. But I think with the proper education to the residents, we would see a difference in that.
We had a real hard time during the COVID shutdowns and everything to try to coordinate and not be able to talk to each other about how we were going to manage an emergency, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
That
even
was-
decisions like closing the office and so
Right.
forth had to come back to the board. The three of us couldn't discuss it. And there were some times we had to deal with that stuff. So that could be a conversation, a future conversation over the next couple of months. Anything else on the charter? No action taken. We will move to guidelines for property exemptions.
Poverty.
That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
For poverty exemptions, proposed resolution 2022-01. In your material, we got a request from the county equalization to take a look at our numbers. We provided you with the papers. This is, we have 2 applications within the township that in the past years received that exemption, and they can no longer receive it because they're within a few $100s of what the poverty guidelines allow. One of the questions I asked, and you'll see that's on this paper here, was what do other townships do and how do they look at it? And they sent me numbers. It's from Tracy Jones. There are 5 CVTs in the county that use the 1.5 federal guideline, which is on this chart over here. There are 2 CVTs that double the federal exemption, and there are 4 that increase the poverty guideline by 2.5 times the federal. Then there are 8 CVTs, cities, villages, and townships, that use the HUD standards, which is the other chart on this paper. And then there are 13 that use the federal, which is where we're at currently. There's another sheet there that showed you where to go. There was a, did it not get printed? I had another sheet that showed you the 2 applications we have. One is a single family, one is a double family, or family of 2. They are both within the village. I met with Jerry Walker and the clerk treasurer.
Oh, Debbie Bigger.
Debbie Bigger, thank you. Debbie Bigger, and went over it with them, and they were comfortable if the township wanted to move up to the 1.5 federal poverty guidelines, which would allow those 2 to qualify. I did that because they were village residents. They are 2 residents that have gotten that exemption over the last couple of years. So,
It should
We
be,
don't
it should
get
be
ve-
a
we only
township
get
policy,
maybe
yeah.
3 or 4 applications a year.
Right.
right.
And it shouldn't be applicant-driven, because maybe there's 2 applicants that don't meet. Let's say we change it to the 1.5, and you get ones that have the same issue at 1.5. It shouldn't be
This is
changed according to applicants. It should be a policy of the township on what we want to give as far as leeway.
I think what's important to note is the difference. The federal poverty line is an income of $12,760 annually. The federal poverty guideline times 1.5 would be 19,140 and 25,000 for a two-family. And you're right, I said this was kind of a sticky wicket because typically what we have in front of us are facts, figures, numbers, and we have to make a call. There is undeniably an emotional side to this. You know, what do we want to do for our community? Like I said, in this particular case, because both applicants were from the village, I did address it with the village because we have the authority to make the call. But they didn't have any objections, and their comment was they'd rather see somebody stay in their house than lose their house over their taxes. So I said I would bring that information to the board, and you can have the discussion. You have the examples of other communities and what they do. I was surprised to see that there were 4 CVTs that actually raised the poverty level in their community by 2.5 times the feds, which puts a family of 1 poverty level at 31,009, and for a family 2, it's 43,001. So those are some pretty high numbers, but those are the different numbers that are out here. Also, if you look at the HUD numbers in relationship to the federal poverty guidelines, all of the HUD numbers are higher than that basic federal poverty number. And HUD has 3 standards they call extremely low income, very low income, and then just low income. But even their low income for one person is 44,800. That's quite a high number in comparison to what's over here. So that's the topic. That's what's in front of the board. Any discussion?
So you have to decide, and then it gets inserted into the resolution at the bottom, the last paragraph. I put-
Yeah, the decision before us is whether to stay with the federal poverty guideline or increase it. If you make the decision you want to increase it, then you have to land on one of these other alternatives. And there are 3 HUD alternatives and 4 federal poverty guidelines, whether it's 1.5, 2, 2.5, or 3. So that's what's in front of you as a board. Any discussion?
Well, it looks to me like over a third of these entities listed use the Fed, just a straight federal poverty guideline. Compared to these other ones. So, I mean,
Yeah, it's
And that's what we
13
use.
use the federal guidelines, 17 use higher guidelines.
19.
I'm sorry, 19.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's 19 communities are above the federal, and then 13 are at the federal. So there wasn't any, I tried to look at this from several different ways. There wasn't any hard, if they had said to me, everybody does it, that might, it just kind of seemed to be all over the place. The only thing that I thought was when I looked at the federal poverty guideline, I tried to put myself in the position of somebody that only makes $12,700. That's $1,000 a month. That's $250 a week. I don't know how you even live on that, but that's probably why it's called poverty. So I get that. Any other thoughts?
So we're just voting on whether or not the 50,000 it should be changed?
No, whether we should, what federal poverty guideline we should use.
No.
Just a
This-
regular
this
federal.
chart-
But it's currently
Or-
50,000.
Well, it's
No, that
currently
50,000 has to do with applicants. That's assets.
Oh, this is for the, I agree.
Yeah,
Okay,
so this
got
is
it.
already an approved
Got it.
resolution
Got
from
it.
last year,
Got it.
updated for the new act that they put in place.
Yep.
So we currently are following the federal poverty guidelines.
Steve,
Yep,
So-
this is what you're looking at.
right.
Deciding whether we want to raise that poverty level for Holly Township.
So the only change would be made is on,
5, then it-
Yeah,
then they gotta
yeah,
hit that instead of that.
right.
So they gotta be under that to qualify.
To qualify,
Right now, they
right.
just have to be at that or under
Sure,
that.
sure.
But it's, as they said, we only get about maybe 3 or 4 at the most applications a
Yeah,
year.
we currently have 2, and both of them are they're within less than $1,000 of the poverty level. So they're just over it. If it were moved to 1.5, then those 2 applicants that we
Okay.
have would both qualify. So what is the pleasure of the board? All right, I will go ahead and make a motion to increase the federal poverty guidelines for Holly Township to 1.5 for Resolution 2022-01. Is there support?
Support.
Motion by Cullis, support by Winchester. Is there any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Winchester,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Burton,
Yes.
Root,
Yes.
Collis.
Yes. Motion carries 5-0.
Well, shouldn't we add the resolution? Because it needs to be approval of the resolution.
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I said 2022-01.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Part of the
Okay.
motion. Then I-
Apparently, I wasn't paying attention.
Okay, no, I did. I don't get everything right, but I got that one.
Okay.
Okay, that concludes, oh no, number 3, the treasurer's letter of recommendation.
Yes,
Mark?
last month I submitted my letter of retirement. And I will be retiring on October 31st, 2022. And at that time, I told the board I would be putting together a recommendation for the process of my replacement. And I emailed copies of that to each member of the board on February 9th. And I also emailed them copies of filling township board vacancies due to death or resignation. I wanted to elaborate on that a little bit. I wrote it to be very concise. I could have probably, if I'd have really been, wanted to cover every base, it would be 10 pages long. I didn't want to do that. I just want to impress upon the board that for my position, I think it's very time sensitive. If the board decides to approve my recommendations, I would like to hire this person for the new temporary position that I'm suggesting, which would be administrative assistant. You can also give them the title of assistant to the deputy treasurer. That's a title that exists. I found that just recently. So for additional information, I have Deputy Treasurer Heipel's resume, also her certificate through Michigan State University for the Michigan Municipal Treasurers Institute. She's working towards getting her certification. And it also includes a page from the MTA, what we call the Red Book, that has information on Holding Township Board Office. So I will give each of you a copy of this. I would like to, as I mentioned in my recommendations, under the Michigan compiled laws, as treasurer, I cannot vote on my own replacement, so I will have to abstain from that vote. And then I'm thinking it wouldn't be appropriate to make a motion that I can't vote on. So I will not be making any motions concerning that either. But I would like the board to put this back on the agenda for next month. I would like them to vote next month because we'd like to, if you're going to approve these recommendations, and I'm going to hire someone for that temporary position that would eventually become the deputy treasurer's position, they would end up being promoted. We would like to train them for 6 months so that they are prepared, and that would provide for a smooth transition. Just a quick bit of history. The previous treasurer was Bernice Alexander. She served as treasurer for a little over 35 years. Prior to her, the supervisor at the time, Seeley Tinsman, he served as supervisor and treasurer. He trained Bernice Alexander, and then I was elected in 2008 after Bernice. So technically, Holly Township has only had 2 treasurers in its history. So this is a pretty important transition that has to take place, and we're talking about the taxpayers' money. It's their money. We need to be very cautious that this transition goes very smoothly and that the public is confident that the new person that's going to be taken over will be able to maintain the integrity of the position and maintain the continuity and the consistency of the office. So if you have any questions concerning that, I can answer them for you. I will say this, I need, according to my recommendations, I do need to feel that the board is confident that this is the direction to go, and that I will be able to hire someone, and I will be able to train them for the 6 months. If I'm unable to do that, and the board decides not to vote, or whatever happens, it's going to be difficult for me then to be able to fulfill my recommendations. So if the board, as an example, because I want the board to be very clear on what all this means. If the board does not vote next month, that's going to be interpreted by me as being a vote of no confidence, because I'm prepared to move forward if the board so chooses. If the board doesn't, then the board will vote. That is the 4 of you, because I cannot vote. It will be a decision that the 4 of you make. So if you make a decision, if you decide not to follow my recommendations, then you've made a decision and you accept full responsibility of that decision that you make. I will not be involved after that in any way. And there will be no training in my office until I leave office, because I don't want that disruption to my normal flow of business.
So you're saying you would not train anybody else that we recommend?
That is correct, because
I just want to make sure.
Well, right, because the board would be telling me, no, we're not accepting your recommendations. That's fine. But the board then accepts full responsibility for the decision that they make. I won't be a part of it.
So you're kind of holding us hostage then?
No, I can't.
Yes, you are, because you're
Yes.
saying I'm not going to train anybody unless it's this person.
I am assuring the board what I will do if they accept my recommendations. If they do not accept my recommendations, I am assuring the board that I cannot support that. And that's my conviction. That I do not feel that that would be the correct decision to make. The board can make it, but if they do, you should expect to be held responsible for the decision you make by the public. I didn't get to vote. I'm not going to be a part of that.
It's the
And
board's
Even if I
decision.
disagree with you, it doesn't matter. I can't vote. I can't express my opinion.
So
But I-
the issue that I have here is we have a letter of intent to retire, and that letter doesn't become official until October 2nd. Because you have the clause in there that you can rescind that letter up until October 1st. The
Yes,
other,
but it was primarily contingent upon the status of the pandemic.
for whatever reason, it's there. The other issue, the other comment that I would make is that in the case of an election where a sitting treasurer would lose the election's on November 6th, the new treasurer comes in on November 20th, there isn't really any time for any training there. In fact, quite often what happens is the treasurer that lost has nothing to do with the new treasurer, and they come in cold. In the event that a sitting elected official passes away, the board has 45 days to replace that person, and obviously there's no training there either. So these transitions happen. There are other people that come in for training. We really had no advance warning when we lost our deputy treasurer, Janet, last name?
Janice Nash.
Nash, I'm sorry. Yeah, when we lost Janice Nash. So it's up to this board which way they want to go. But like I said, with the issue that the letter of intent for retirement really doesn't become official until October 2nd, I question what the point of going through all the motions would be. But that's up to the board.
Well, when Janice left, the last 2 months she worked, she was very sick. She missed a lot of work. She worked maybe 3 or 4 days per month for the last 2 months. Therefore, I was working alone.
Right.
Then I hired the current deputy treasurer, Suzanne Heipel, and I had to do the treasurer's job, the deputy treasurer's job, and to train the new deputy treasurer.
And we hired
And it was
people.
extremely difficult. And it was not in the best interest of Holly Township. And I'm trying to provide for a smooth transition. You know, Holly Township is growing, it's continuing to grow. We're not the small little backwoods township that we used to be. So I'm trying to do what I feel is in the best interest of the township. But as I said, the board, when you vote, it'll be the 4 of you. I won't be involved because I can't vote.
So what I'm going to bring up goes to both sides of this because I don't have an opinion because I just received this resume here to look at. So my first question being is if this individual was selected, would this individual be interested in running for office?
No, I already talked to her. She would finish out his term. I usually see when you resign early that you transition somebody that you would hope would run in the next election so that they have that experience. And it is up to us as a board, and I think that it's your obligation as the treasurer who was elected to make a smooth transition for whoever the board decides to appoint in that position. That's just my opinion. I find it
Well-
very difficult
well,
because it's basically a demand and almost a threatening letter
No,
of recommendation.
I was very much aware of the fact that there would be members of the board that would try to frame it that way. But as I have said,
Maybe
I
you should
am,
read
I
it
am
in
assuring,
public.
I'm assuring the board what I will do. And I'm assuring the board what I won't do. But I am not threatening anyone. I'm not holding anything over anybody's head. You can vote any way you want to, and I can't vote. That's the way it's designed, that's the way it's set up. That is the procedure.
But you're saying it's, we either choose your person or you're not going to participate at all in training anybody or helping
No,
us
because
move forward.
that's why I gave you Deputy Treasurer Suzanne Heipel's resume. If you look at her resume, a second here.
Then I'll make my second point when we're done
sorry.
with this. That's okay.
All right. If you look at her resume, she has a bachelor's degree, she has a master's degree. She is currently serving as the deputy treasurer and has for 3 years. She's a current member of the Michigan Municipal Treasurers Association. She's completed her first year program and currently enrolled in the second year to get her Michigan Certified Professional Treasurer's credentials. She has served as a member of the Village Zoning Board. She's served as a member of the Village Planning Commission. She has served on the Village Council on 2 separate occasions. She's very well known in the community. She already serves as the treasurer in my absence. What I'm saying is that Holly Township, as an employer, should encourage promotion from within. as big companies do, as most companies do. So I find it, I interviewed, 3 years ago, I had to interview people for the deputy treasurer's position, and I advertised for people to have experience with BSNA software. That is the software that the governments use for taxes and assessing. It is not used in the private sector at all. I didn't get one application from anyone that had BSNA experience. So it's highly unlikely you're going to find anyone that could even come close to having the credentials and the experience that Deputy Heupel has. So for the board to decide on something other than that, my conviction is that that their reasons are not legitimate, that they would be deciding that for some reason other than qualifications, for some reason other than experience, and for some reason other than education. Because this person also has to be a resident of Holly Township. I think it's highly unlikely, if not absolutely impossible, that you're going to find a candidate that could have come even close to her abilities and, her experience. So that is my conviction, that if the board wants to go in another direction, that's fine. I don't think personally that it would be for legitimate reasons, but the board can do as they choose to. But I refuse to support a decision by 4 members of this board that I can't even vote on, that I feel is illegitimate. And that's my position.
Okay. So the second part of what I was mentioning, now that I know the one part, and I was not the answer I was necessarily expecting, but I mean, and this is always something that if we went another direction, I mean, we can speak to other townships to see if we can get our individual trained to other townships. There's nothing saying that an individual can't go somewhere else and get trained. I mean, obviously, it'd be the willingness of whoever that township may be. We're not going to pay the individual, so that's up to them too if they didn't want to receive pay. But I mean, that is certainly a possibility. So whether that be Fenton Township, Grand Blanc Township, any other neighboring township. Because I know, working in the municipal realm myself, I mean, I've had to train people who were coming on new positions that came from different locations. Of course, the numbers are going to be different, but theoretically, everything else is the same. The processes are the same for the most part.
So there
I didn't want the board to operate under the assumption that they could hire who they wanted to and bring them in and then expect me to train them.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to happen.
Yep.
And I want to be very clear on that right up front, well in advance. Make sure the board has adequate time to decide what they'd like to do.
So I have had a couple of people come forward that were interested after the announcement of their retirement. I know we also looked at if the announcement of the retirement, which in essence is a resignation, if it had been at the time it was read, which was at the January meeting, there would have been enough time to put it on the ballot and let the public decide who the new person was. The problem with that is we have to, within 45 days, appoint somebody to the position. Now, did we get an answer to the question? I had raised the question. I said, if Mark were to resign today, could the board appoint him as the interim treasurer, which would allow it to be put on the ballot? But I don't know if we ever got an answer back for that.
No, but it can go on the ballot if he was to resign.
Prior
to
the
April.
date that the petitions are due.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. My question was,
that's not my date. So.
My question was, if the resignation were today, and then the board appointed you as the interim, would that allow us to put it on the ballot? That way you would remain the treasurer till October, well, not on October 31st, but 5 days after that, whenever the election falls. It was just a question we had asked.
Mm-hmm.
Because that would leave it up to the public to decide. But, again, that's up to this board on what you want to do. Like I said, the issue for me is there really isn't an absolute retirement imminent until October 2nd, due to the clause that's in the
Well,
letter.
because the board can't actually appoint someone, and they cannot appoint someone any more than 30 days prior to the retirement date.
Right.
You can't.
Yeah.
So, I believe that the board could appoint someone sooner than that, but the motion would have to state that it would be effective as of October 2nd.
Oh.
I think that could be done. But
So-
you probably would want to check
Well-
with legal to make sure.
You had asked this to be put back on next month's agenda, and in the meantime, I guess we have some unanswered questions that we can look into.
And I do have one more question. So going back to, say we decided to go on this individual, are we sure if she would be willing to train the next person? Because if she wasn't, then we're in the same boat we are
No,
now.
if you read my recommendations carefully, if the board approves the creation of a temporary administrative assistant position that expires on October 31st,
Mhm.
that I would authorize the deputy treasurer to interview and hire someone for that position, with the intent that at the end of, when I retire and deputy treasurer becomes treasurer, she is required by law to hire a deputy treasurer.
No.
And
But
this
wh-
person would be, she would hire them with the intent of I want this person to become my deputy treasurer.
Mhm. And my question is, if she's not running again, at the end of that term, is she willing to train whoever's elected at that point? Because that's
Okay, so now you're talking about something that was verbally said to Clerk Winchester. I wouldn't, take that as being written in stone. I'm not saying she absolutely wouldn't run.
No.
Now, she may have had a conversation with the Clerk Winchester. That's fine. I've seen people change their mind. It happens.
But she also said that she would not train anybody that comes in.
Well, if what happens is this, on the day that I retire, the deputy treasurer's position ends because I hired that deputy treasurer.
But we could hire her as administration, and she could stay in an administrative position.
You're talking about the current deputy treasurer?
Yeah.
If she agreed.
Right.
Right, but she's saying that she will not.
Well, again, put yourself in Deputy Treasurer Heupel's position. She's been in the position 3 years. She has an extensive background. She has been taking the classes to become a certified treasurer. Wouldn't you assume that if the treasurer left office that you would be promoted to treasurer? You've
No.
served as treasurer in the treasurer's absence. So again, if the board decided not to promote her to treasurer, and you were in that position, wouldn't you say that's a vote of no confidence and consider exploring your other options? Sure you would.
They didn't appoint the previous deputy to me. I was appointed. Most of them don't. It depends.
It's been, a lot has changed since you came into office. A lot has changed since I came into office. It's very difficult to run our offices. You have 2 people in the clerk's office, you have 2 people in the treasurer's office. If one of you are absent for any reason, vacation, illness, whatever, you got one person on duty trying to cover the office. And it's extremely difficult.
Any more discussion? Okay, then we'll go to our last public comment. I'll go ladies first. I got 3 hands up. Yeah, you're the lady. John and Pat don't qualify.
I would like to pass these out to the audience.
Mary, while you're up there talking, if you can take the mask so we can hear you.
Mary Blanchard, 3444 Old Creek Drive, Holly, Michigan.
Thank you.
I would like to,
I'll pass them out.
okay, I'll just explain. For those people who are not aware of the situation with the Falk Road dump and the Holly Hills manufactured home community expansion, I brought some pictures. You can see in these the extreme water situation that we have here. We value our water, and we need our water, especially for our private drinking wells. So I'll pass this around.
I'll pass them around too.
Okay. On the back side is actually a long,
Get the microphone back to your hand. Sorry.
on the back side is actually the long view, and it does show all the interconnections of our water.
I'll give it to the guy back.
Last Thursday, I sent a text to Supervisor Cullis asking if he had gotten a response to the previous month's decision that the township was going to issue a FOIA request to Eagle regarding hydrology. And I will read the request. This was submitted by Amy Hillman, assistant to the supervisor. It says hydrogeological investigation that was prepared to allow for the placement of the Holly Hills manufactured home community wells closer than 2,000 feet from a location of a known dump, and the pumping test data and analysis that would have been done as part of the permitting process for the water supply wells. On Friday, Supervisor Cullis got back with me saying he did not think that there had been a response. I went in on Monday, and Amy Hillman, the assistant to the supervisor, said she had gotten a response. And this is the full response. Most of this is records we already have.
Microphone.
Most of it actually has to do with the 1994 geodynamics report, the preliminary report, and also some information regarding the well test, a 24-hour test done by Brown Well Drilling back in 1999. Their response, in addition to these, is a denied. It says the purpose of the FOIA is to provide the public with access to existing, non-exempt public records of public bodies. The Remediation and Redevelopment Division has searched its records and is unable to locate the documents you requested. The requested documents may have been misfiled or removed from our premises without authorization. In the event they are located, we will provide them to you. Accordingly, this portion of your request must be denied. I don't know that this was submitted directly to RRD, Remediation and Redevelopment Division, but this division actually deals with the Falk Road dump, not the Holly Hills manufactured home community. For Eagle, one of their favorite expressions is they expect and believe it will work. With this, I was told in an email by an Eagle staffer, the owners of Holly Hills manufactured home community do not need to do anything else to prove there is enough safe water for 242 current homes, 192 new homes, and all the other homes in the Holly community that rely on private wells. Those wells were drilled in 1999. They cannot provide any other hydrologic information regarding those wells or any other hydrologic information. including the groundwater or surface water. I don't feel comfortable depending on a result from 1999, especially considering that apparently back in 1999, they did not consider the contaminated dump. Our expert, Mike Wilczynski, the geologist, he feels that those two wells already are pulling towards the wells in the manufactured home park. In addition to the two wells that are 314 feet deep in the cold water shale, a very poor quality of water that also can pull saline and chloride.
Mary, how much more do you have? I don't have my phone because we're using it to record the meeting.
Okay,
But I know you've got 3 minutes. Are you about done?
yes.
Okay.
I was told in the same email that they understand our concern with the Falk Road dump next door. But the MHC does regular testing of their wells, so they would learn if contamination was evident. I responded that I was sure the homeowners would prefer that the contamination never reached those wells. In addition to the two 314 deep wells, there's now a 40,000 to 60,000 gallon bladder tank that has been installed for fire suppression, but it can also be used for water use for the manufactured home community residents if needed. That's a lot of water. And we don't have an assurance from anybody that there's going to be enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Feeney?
Pat Feeney, 210 Franklin. Something that Meriden has mentioned time before, she didn't mention tonight, but that aquifer where that water is comes here. It's our drinking water, people. It's not out there, you know, some distance away. It's underneath us, it's what we're drinking. But what I actually came up to say was to thank Mr. Burton for bringing the attention about the audit. And it begs the question, from what came up tonight, who is in charge of the contract? Because if Mr. Burton hadn't brought that up, your next audit wasn't going to be done. So who is in charge that, you know, quite frankly, that should have been communicating with these people. And if it's a contract, it's something that should be reviewed, and it's like, hey, time to go back to these people. We got a new contract. That's a major ball being dropped there. Because you don't do your audit, I mean, you know, you're in trouble with the state. I just think that's sloppiness, and it really needs to be addressed. Thank you.
John?
John Love, 200 North Saginaw. There's some issues that are going to remake what Holly is going to be in the future. First off, the schools, $97 million in bonds. What are they going to do with it? They're going to blow up this building, the whole place, and they're going to replace it because the paint's peeling, or there's a few things wrong with it. They're going to then move the middle school down here. And then they're going to turn the middle school out there on North Holly into a community center. So the village can move their offices out there, and the township could move theirs out there, and whatever else they're going to do, they could put out there. So that thing is all paid for. They take care of maintaining the building. You wouldn't have any of the problems except selecting the pictures to put on the wall. But they haven't really delineated what the costs are for demolition, what are the costs for the new operation here, and then they have some other odds and ends that they want to throw in. But $97 million, that's more than the bonds they had the whole time they've been in office, or around since 2018. Moving right along to the village, they got to keep this trend going. They want 3 mills for property for the police and fire, because we got to have police and fire, so let's give them money. I wouldn't mind it if it was for the water bills, because the water bills are driving people out of this place. And that's where they should be looking at what they need to be doing. And it's, you know, it grows on trees out here. And then we got the marijuana deal. 22 facilities. We don't just want one or two, we got to have 22. And then they even allowed them to be in my neighborhood. But that's not a problem. Then the state says there has to be a 1,000-foot buffer from schools and churches. That's too much for Holly. So by the ordinance, they can cut it, and they cut it in half. We've got to be all together, kind of folksy. It's just standard stuff, I guess. I appreciate the outline about the charter. I was wondering about that. You've explained it well. Anyway, so I have a petition here, and I have some facts. Here's a fact. There's 1,300 municipalities in the state of Michigan. Only 117 have opened these operations. So it isn't just the wave of the future to pave it all over with marijuana facilities. And they're turning Holly into a marijuana growth industry. So it will be a magnet for, that's what the mayor of Chicago said. He didn't want Chicago to be a magnet for this kind of commercial operation. So that's what's taking place. So I have the petitions. If you want to sign one, it puts it on the ballot. And if it's approved, these things are gone. And will be like the other 1,000 municipalities that don't have this attraction. And that's what, Holly is not going to be proud of its past. It's going to have a new future. And it's going to be a magnet for this kind of activity instead of the kind of community that I thought was a nice one, where we have the atmosphere in the old buildings until we got the water bills out of whack.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment? Not appearing? I need somebody to help me with the time.
8:21.
It's 8, the clock in this room says 10 after 8. I knew that wasn't right.
8:21, yep.
So we will adjourn at 8:21.
I guess the clock doesn't work, so they got to tear it down.
Mr. Stern, if you just come up and give me a signature on this letter.